Alright. Welcome to Sideboard MTG. My name's Eric, and today let's talk about MTG. Now, again, this format that I'm doing here has changed a lot and will continue to change. And sometimes we have guests. We do not have guests today. Sometimes this is live. Today, this is not live. So, I do have 16 decks that I have pulled up for you guys. There are 32 listed in the online PTQ. And I want to talk about the top 8 for sure, but then, out of the other 16 decks that were available for us, or out of the 32 decks in total that were available for us, I did pull 8 other decks out that I want to talk about. So that's a lot of decks to talk about. I'm going to jump right into it. If you like the show, then give it a thumbs up so more people can see it. And if you like the content in general, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I do this vlog about once a week, so hope you enjoy. Alright guys, as you can see here, I've got up the pairings, the listings here, and we had a lot of really cool decks in this. Black red aggro took the format. I mean, first place. We're definitely going to be talking about all the top 8 here. I do want to point out a couple things. I guess I'll just kind of jump into our honorable mentions and stuff. I've pulled up the Jun list, I've pulled up the Crixus list, the Sultai list, Esper, things like that. We've got all of these pulled up. There was only one approach list here. This is the Esper list that I pulled up. This particular Esper list is just a Esper Gate to the Afterlife. Single copy of God Pharaoh's Gift. Not really going to talk about that a lot. We actually seen copies of that deck, kind of pop up in the past, and we may play it or something like that in the future, but right now it's just kind of not really one of the decks that I find as being even remotely innovative, as it's just kind of a flashback to an old deck. But the Esper approach, that's something a little bit new, and we're definitely going to be talking about that. I know a lot of people are excited to see Sultai in a top 36 or top 32, so that's one we're going to talk about. Anyway, let's jump straight into it. We've got a lot to cover, and we'll get there. If you guys want to see that list, there'll be a link in the description box, like down there, right down there. That's pretty cool. All right. Anyway, I do have the first of our honorable mentions here, Green-Black Constrictor. Guys, I'm looking at you. One copy of Green-Black Constrictor in the top 32. That's it. The deck is in a bad spot in the meta right now. It is not a good time for a Constrictor deck or any synergy deck. That's why we're not seeing a lot of the tribes, just go off, because you can't have synergy on the battlefield. Crixus will not allow it, and you guys are going to see there are a lot of Crixus, even though Crixus itself has shifted into control, and I said that. I said that is why Crixus is going to be a dominating deck this season, is because it can shift from mid-range to control and back and forth, and can adapt to the meta as the meta shifts. It has all the tools to continue to adapt, so I don't think Crixus is going anywhere, and I think that currently, because Crixus is in such a good position, it is pushing the Snake deck and the other tribal decks out of the format. And unfortunately, by the time Crixus is gone, so will the Snake, but that will make room for those other tribes, and I'm setting on that opinion. I just do not think that this is a safe bet right now. Yes, you can pull away, you can get in there, you can surprise some people, you might be able to just dominate your F&M with it. However, you might not either. I mean, I personally do not think that green-black is where we want to be right now. All right, so that's just my opinion on the green-black. Let's talk a little bit about the next honorable mention here. Now, this is the Esper approach. The Esper approach deck. One of the things I like about the Esper approach deck is it brought a new card to our attention. 3 mana, exile target creature with power 3 or less. Where has this... How come we've never seen this? Alright, well, this does a real number on the green-red aggro decks, and it's also a black Magma Spray. Not Magma Spray, but if you're exiling, you know, Scrap Heap Scrounger and things like that, then this is exactly where you want to be. And it allows you to use some exile effects on some cheaper creatures that you would not use, that you wouldn't want to use your Vraska's Contempt on. And it does run 4 Vraska's Contempt, so I'm highly expecting that this is one of the cards that help push Mardu out of the top 32. If you guys did notice, there was no Mardu there, so Mardu Vehicles has definitely been pushed back, and I believe this is one of the cards that is helping do that, and it's helping, you know, fight back against those, you know, Scrap Heap Scrounger decks, the vehicle decks, and things like that. So this will exile a Aether Sphere Harvester, so that is something to think about. Now, he did run multiple copy, like more copies of Search for Azcanta than we normally see, but in all, this is definitely a control deck. I normally see like 2 Search for Azcantas, but he's all in on the approach. There's no other win con in the main deck. Game 1, it is all about approach, and I love that about this deck. He did not split hairs. He is going to control the game. He is going to cast his approach, and then immediately after, as soon as he can, he's going to dig through those 6 cards that are on top of the approach, and he's going to cast another approach. Now, we can see that it's highly evident in his land base, but there was one card that I expected to see here that I did not see, and you guys may see that it's not here. No deserts, no Ipnu. Like, he is just a flat out control deck. He's not worried about it. He's going to use Search for Azcanta. He's going to use Glimmer of Genius to peel through those cards to get to that approach. I like it. It's a great deck. In the sideboard of this deck, he has the ability to turn into a blue-black control deck, 2 the Scarab Gods, 3 Torrential Gearhulks. You know, Essence Extraction. Only 1 Essence Extraction. He went with an extra copy of the Reaver's Ambush here. Reaver Ambush, wow. Wow. I mean, this exiles Kumena. A bunch of cards just fall victim to this. Key cards in a lot of different things. Exile the Cat. So this hits, you know, Regal Caracal. It doesn't hit Glorybringer. It doesn't hit the Phoenix. So those are some things to worry about. But in, you know, J-Light Ranger, the Snake, Glint Sleeve Siphoner, the rest of the meta. And when I say J-Light Ranger, you can answer, it's an instant speed. You can answer, you know, with, you know, the Explore triggers on the stack. Go ahead and just exile it. Bam, done. It works. Then there's a lot of life gain from the spells themselves, and this is one of the things that I think helped this deck fight against the format of red deck, is that, you know, you're having Moment of Craving and things like that to kind of to fight against those. So that's awesome. A single copy of Yehini's Expertise, just biding time until he can just win, and again, just turns into, you know, blue-black control the Scarab God out of the sideboard. I love it. I mean, the only white card in the deck is Approach. I love it. Blue-black control, Approach. Let's do it. I think it is a great way to end this control deck. Why haven't we been doing this before? Next, I was excited to see this in the top 32. I ain't even gonna lie. This is awesome, guys. Let's point to the real deal. 4 copies of Watley. I love Watley. She's awesome. She's awesome. She's just... Alright, let's talk about what makes this deck work. Now, yeah, it's kind of a tokens deck, but it's kind of not tokens. This is just green-white aggro with Watley. Now, we can call it tokens because we've got Legion's Landing here. We've got, you know, a Sacred Cat, but this is a Danto's Vanguard. This is Merfolk Branchwalker. We've got Servo's Expedition, and yes, we've got, you know, Saram's Expertise in the deck. We're making tokens when these things come back from the graveyard, but no, like, major token payout other than Watley herself. Just getting a Watley down, get it to ultimate, and then, you know, just keep drawing cards, playing multiple Watleys. You know, it's great. It's great. We played Green White Cats. I have yet to play the Green White aggro deck with Watley. I promise you guys we will be playing this deck at some point this week or next week. I want to get through so many of these decks in the near future. So if you guys want to see these decks, you know, start leaving me some comments down there, and we'll jump into playing them. I mean, let me know which one of these, any of the decks that I cover today. If you guys want to see those get played, just let me know, and you know, we'll pull the cards. We'll go play them. All right. The red, green, black, Jun in standard. I mean, man, Jun's kind of not even in modern anymore. Isn't it Sultai now? Like, aren't they just like, gotta have Jace? Anyway, Jun in standard. Resilient Kenra showing up here. Now, I seen Ross Mirren play this Monday, or a version, you know, kind of similar to this Monday against Brad Nelson, and man, that Sultai deck that Brad Nelson was playing just dominated this. Yeah, Ross did pick up a game, and you know, the only thing that really saved him was the fact that he had 4 of these Phoenixes. So if you guys are, you know, I think it's kind of to the point where you're either on this all in, or you're just not playing the Phoenix at all. So, like, seriously, he was running 4 Phoenix, and that was probably the best card that he could have. However, you know, like with Gonti and things showing up, it was kind of bad too. So, I mean, like, you know, it, your opponent getting it's not the worst thing. At least you don't necessarily have to 2-for-1 it. You just kill it. It goes to your graveyard. You know, that's a thing. It gives them a blocker, though. They get to keep a blocker. Glorybringer is really great. I like Glorybringer decks. This is a really good curve to be able to it, I wish it had a slight energy theme in it so that you could actually turn 3 the Phoenix and then turn 4 Glorybringer. I think that would really like up the curve a lot. I am not fond of Merfolk Branchwalker. I don't like. This is not the 2-drop we want. Like, I get it. People are, hey, yeah, this could put a card. I'm not sold on Branchwalker, guys. Like, this card is not where I really want to be in an aggro deck. But the deck is really powerful. I have seen you know, versions of the deck being run with Ronus. There's no Ronus here. This deck is Scrap Heap Scroungers, Resilient Kenra. I mean, it's just coming through for value. It's just I'm going to try to continue to get value, and it's basically just a Jun Monsters deck. So nothing real, you know, innovative here or anything like that. We haven't gotten, you know, anything new. Like, we're not seeing Thrashing Brontodon, or, you know, Brash just isn't showing up. Since the beginning of Rivals, we've just been seeing these 4 braids, and that's kind of it. Sideboard, no real innovations here either. The one card that I guess we could really talk about would be all of the red-green decks are starting to run Struggle to Survive in at least a few copies. And it's something that you need to be aware of because it's a 3 mana, kill your creature in most situations. And the 2 mana, each player shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library, is extremely, extremely powerful. When they go at the end of your turn, struggle, you're the Scarab God, and then 2 mana on their turn, shuffle it back in. That's pretty powerful, guys. So that is something that you guys need to worry about. It's something you need to watch out for. Most of these red-green decks are running 1 of this in the main board and 2 in the sideboard. So against the Scarab God decks, be wary of this. It is happening. Brash did show up in the side here, so that gives this guy, you know, 6 ways to deal with artifacts. And I'm pretty sure that was more than enough to help him deal with Mardu vehicles and stuff. So I guess that's why we're just not going to see any more Mardu vehicles right now. Everyone's just packing enough of braids. And when we start talking about the Crixus Controls in the top 8, you're going to see exactly what I'm talking about. So let's move on down to a deck that caught my attention here. There were a ton of red decks in the top 32. It littered the top 32 of the PTQ. And even littered the top 8 with 2 copies, one at 4 and one at 5. But there was one deck, and you can call it Big Red. They were calling it Mono Red Midrange. But it is Chandra's Rekindling Phoenix Glory Bringers. Pia Nalar. Like, the deck is much higher on the curve than it normally would be. Still has the Lightning Strikes. Gave up the shocks for Magma Sprays, for a Braid, for Earthshaker Kenra. Like that, this is the creature balance here. Just Earthshaker Kenra, Pia Nalar, and then from there it's Rekindling Phoenixes and Glory Bringers all day, and Chandra to lead the way. I mean, it's I love it. I think it's great. We've seen, treasure red decks show up in Ixalan, and now we're getting 4 treasure maps here in mono red mid range. No hazards here in the main board. I don't think that I like this Hazard's Undying Fury here, but maybe, I mean, like when you are that powerful out of the main board, and you're casting, each of those non-land cards that cost 5 or less, that could be huge. That could be huge. So Hazard's Undying Fury may not be that bad, especially when you're in top deck mode. This is probably a great top deck. I am not used to this card. I don't have a lot of play with it, so I don't know if I like it or not. But I'm sure he caught some people completely by surprise with this. And Sand Strangler, he actually has the hazards. He can get on the cheaper side of things if he needs to. Sand Strangler just really good with that enter the battlefield trigger here. I mean, I think Melissa Del Tour, she nicknamed it Desert FTK. That kind of stuck with me. So I like Desert FTK. All right, Aether Sphere Harvester for the mirror match, things like that. Wiping the board is not something he's really worried about. The most he's going to kill is, a Phoenix, and it will probably come back. So, that's usually not going to be a big issue here for him. Killing a Kendra or his own Pia is probably not going to be, a worry. And most of the time you can get this down, then play the Pia or something. So, another copy of Pia, Shock, and then some Chandra's Defeat. So, I like the sideboard. I like where this red deck's at. I do like the mono red mid range. That's pretty cool. I mean, the deck looks pretty cool. I like it. So we might actually play this version of red deck. It looks like there's going to be some more advanced lines. You're not going to just be trying to kill them before they actually get to start playing Magic. So with that being the case, you're going to have to play some Magic. So I wouldn't say this is a brainless red deck. I know a lot of people say red decks are brainless, but okay. Red green dinosaurs. All right. Tribal deck, top 32. Actually top 16, I believe, here for the dinosaurs. This did better than like the mono red mid range and things like that. So floating just under the top 8, guys. I like it. I like the Dinos deck. All right, now let's look at the deck. It's a Heart of Kirin deck. We've got Thrashing Brontodon. This is the first time we've seen this in a top 16 in the main deck. Period. I don't think there's another, like maybe there's another Dino deck that might have ran it, but Ronus the Indomitable, Deathgorge Scavenger. And then we get into the 4-drops, right? 4 Rekindling Phoenix, 4 Regisaur Alphas, 2 Galtas, and a Struggle. And then when we look at the sideboard, we'll find the other 2 Struggles. And then, like Shaper Sanctuary, Brash, Sweltering Suns, Chandra's Defeat, Chandra, Carnage Tyrant. Pretty much, everything you would expect in a, a try-hard Dino deck. And that's exactly what it is. I mean, it's a try-hard Dino deck. But this is actually where I said Dinos would end up being, instead of being a true tribe, they would be like a splash tribe in a really, in a good stuff deck. Now, again, we're seeing our Merfolk Branchwalker show up here, and it's not exactly where I want to be. I don't necessarily know if this is the right card. But I will say that, with the Rekindling Phoenix and the Regisaur Alphas, taxing the Vraska's Contempts, it probably paves the way for Galta to get in pretty easily. And, if you get a Galta down, they have to answer that, and they have to answer that quick. So, because Galta doesn't leave a lot of room to play. Like, when Galta comes down, you have to have the Vraska's Contempt or like Hour of Glory or something, or you better hope you got a lot of energy that you can burn into a Harness Lightning. And Grixis is not real common on having that much energy. So, if you can make them spin their Vraska's Contempts on things like Rekindling Phoenixes and then Regisaur Alphas, Galta wins. So, like, I think that's probably the strategy in this deck, is you got to just keep playing through, these other creatures that really tax Vraska's Contempt, including Ronus the Indomitable. So tax Vraska's Contempt, and then you just win with Galta. So, like, even if you don't have haste on Galta, that puts them on a clock. They, like, against your Dino deck, they've probably taken a couple points of damage at somewhere anyway. So I think this is probably the best Dino deck I've seen, just because it has the other Vraska's Contempt taxes in it with, the Rekindling Phoenix and the Ronus, and of course the only real Dino that's going to tax it is, technically it's not even Ripjaw Raptor, because Ripjaw Raptor will eat a Fatal Push. It's under 4. I mean, yeah, you can eat like Fatal Push here, but then you're 2-for-1ing. So, I like where that goes. But either way, this is the best Dino deck we've seen in a while, and I like it. I like where it's going, and again, I'd be interested in playing this one as well. All right, next, Sultai Midrange. Ooh, you guys know I like some Sultai. This is one of my favorite color combinations right now, and it's mainly because of the Reanimator theme and the Hostage Takers and the Scarab God and all of that, and that is so how I enjoy playing Magic. So, I do like Sultai. I just don't think that it's quite as powerful as Grixis right now. But the deck's really good. I like the deck, and it's basically another Glint Sleeve Siphoner deck. It does hinge off the Glint Sleeves, so that's one of the things that has to have an answer. Like, and you'll see that it's packed full of answers for opposing Glint Sleeves, and opposing other creatures, but opposing Glint Sleeves. Fatal Push, Moment of Craving, those sort of things help deal with that. Hostage Taker here is a 4-up. Now, it's been a long time since we've seen this many Hostage Takers in a deck. Even I have cut down to a single Hostage Taker in my deck, and I threw that into my sideboard. And it's just because in so many situations that Hostage Taker is just, it's volatile. Like, it could blow up in your face as, they get their Enter the Battlefield trigger back, or something else happens. And no one wanted to get into the Hostage Taker versus Hostage Taker mirror, because then he who draws the most Hostage Takers and has the most mana wins. So, that's one of those things. It's like, whoa, like, where do we go from here? And it has led into some pretty interesting board states, but that's, Hostage Taker. That's what Hostage Taker does. I like the card, and in certain matchups, this card is just bonkers. Like, it's broken. If they can't answer it, you're 2-for-1ing, and then they might have to answer that, which, leads to a 3-for-1, and so on. And, man, yeah. Take like a Phoenix or a Glory Bringer or something like that. If you take a 2-for-1, and then they have to answer your 2-for-1, and they get 2-for-1 while answering their own 2-for-1, this gets exponentially better. Like, but can backfire in the same direction or in the opposite direction for you. So you take a Glory Bringer that was exerted, they somehow rip a top deck, they get their Glory Bringer back for free, now they kill something else, or you could get a Glory Bringer. You know, and that's why this deck runs Blossoming Defense, and I think that's like a must. Um, I really do. I think that's a must, and it also allows you to just play this on curve if you have like a servant up, and then you can protect it. So if you can protect it for a turn, that's great. We've got 4 copies of the Scarab God in this deck. Yeah, I was holding off on that part. I didn't want to. So that's basically what this deck is. It's Sultai the Scarab God. We're just going to slam the Scarab God. Oh, okay. Well, if I have to, and you take the Scarab God, I'll just hostage take her my own back or something like that. So yeah, it's an expensive deck, guys. Like hostage takers, Vraska's Contempt's up to what, like $12. The Scarab Gods, Vraska, Tori. I mean, I like the deck, and I like everything that it's got going on here. Moment of Craving in the main board with 4 Vraska's Contempts, Fatal Push. You've got answers for everything. This is a decent counter to the things that you want to be countering. And then, Champion of Wits to cycle through some lands. I think it's better than Whirler Virtuoso in the current, format. So I might actually have to play this soon. I just think that I would have to cut down to something like, Chupacabras, Gontis, and maybe only 2 Hostage Takers. I'm just kind of off the hostage taker kick a little bit because of, how many times it's backfired for me. There's just so much removal in the meta right now. All right, if we do look at the sideboard here, we've got, another Tori here, and then Confiscation Coup. There's not a lot of energy, but, you did have the servants, you had the lands and things. So, Confiscation Coup is going to give you 4 more, and, you only need 1 additional to get up there to, like the Scarab God or something like that, which is, pretty good. And I would bring this in against the Scarab God deck, and that kind of lets you run 5. However, I have personally just decided to start running, the Vizier of Many Faces, which is kind of good. I mean, I get to cast mine for 4 and then normally activate, so that kind of works, but not always. So maybe the Confiscation Coup is the way to go. All right, next, a couple Aethersphere Harvesters, Negates, Argyle's Bloodfast to just, draw more cards. And then, Gifted Aetherborn just stops dinos and pretty much anything that's trying to get in there on you. Red deck, going to give you the option to, gain a little bit of life. If nothing else, it's going to eat a bolt. And then Naturalize, what can I say? It's Naturalize. I like Naturalize. I personally think with this many hostage takers that there might be a call to have a single Manglehorn in the deck. Like I like Manglehorn in these type of decks, so a lot of people have forgotten about Manglehorn. I think Manglehorn is really important right now, especially when people are trying to like bring Scrap Heap Scrounger back or something like that so they can crew a heart. So Manglehorn's pretty good. All right, that is the Sultai deck. Now we've got to get into the blue-white tokens deck. Now, this is really tokens, guys. Like, yeah, there's some a few deserts in here. Sheffet Dunes, Scavenger Grounds, Ipni Rivulet, Hostile Desert. So, yeah, there's some deserts in here. Legion's Landing, Anorner Priest, Baffling End, Servo Expedition, Champion of Wits, Sunscourge Champion. Yeah, there's Gideon. Anointed Procession. Like, we ran into this deck a few nights ago. We were, what was it? It was either Saturday or Sunday. We were playing a deck, and we were playing. I think we were playing mono white, and I think I was doing like the mono white aggro, making my own tokens like Catcher's Monument and things like going wide. And this dude was making like a ton of tokens, and he got to like 1,000 life with this deck. So I thought that was pretty cool. That I got to see, this deck firsthand, like go to 1,000 life. This one's really, really close to that. This is also known as, Saffron Olive's Embalm deck. So, if you like MTG Goldfish, go check out Saffron Olive. I think it was like an Ixalan. He built the Embalm deck. You'll notice that, there's not a lot of new cards here. So, yeah, I mean, I like it. We see a Skywiller shot in the sideboard here. Nah, not something we always see. Thopter Arrest, not something we always see. But these cards, they get the job done. They definitely answer certain things in the meta that we just need to have answered. Same thing can be said about Gideon's Intervention. He does have a River's Rebuke in the deck. And other than that, we're just talking, basic value out of his sideboard. Just decent answers to, you know, most of the main decks that you would expect to be facing. So I really like this blue, white, and bomb deck, and I've seen it do some crazy things. So again, I would like to play this one. All right, well, that is the last of our non-top 8 decks. So let's jump straight into number 1 here. What took down the format? What took down the PTQ? Well, the PTQ was taken down by none other than red-black. Yeah, not black-red. This one's red-black. There is a black-red one floating around that's mainly black, and then it's splashed red for like Hazard and things. This is a red deck that splashed black, and let's look at exactly what it splashed into here. No fear of the 4-drop either. Rekindling Phoenix in the main side by side with Hazard, 3 and 3. So that's something that's definitely a thing. We see Ifnir Deadlands along with the Dragon Skull Summits for black sources, and then only 3 swamps. I can see that because you need the double black other than Ifnir to be able to use Ifnir. So I kind of like that. It also, you know, the no Canyon Slews, because I don't think he wanted to come in tapped at all. So, you know, that's one of the things you really got to worry about with a, you know, aggro deck, is not coming in tapped. So, but for the most part, we've got a red deck that has Splash Black for Unlicensed Disintegration, Scrap Heap Scrounger, On-Crop Crasher, and, you know, Earthshaker Kenra, Fanatical Firebrand. Those have kind of already been in red deck. Fanatical Firebrand, this is kind of taking the place of Soulscar Mage at this point, because it can answer like Glint Sleeve Siphoner and things and leave your shock or your lightning strike in hand to go to the face. So I kind of like that. You'll see that they've cut down on the shocks themselves a little bit, making a little bit more room for braids here instead of cutting back on lightning strike, and I kind of like that. They've also, you know, added the 2 unlicensed disintegration. Maybe that's what they made room for here. But Soulscar Mage is kind of being, you know, pushed to the side here, and they're just going with the Fanatical Firebrands and trying to outrun another red deck, I assume. Now, in the sideboard, you'll see a Heartless Pillage. I thought this was pretty cool. Target opponent discards 2 cards. I guess that's value. I mean, when they're having this, like, play to dig and to answer you, you make them discard 2 cards on, you know, turn 3 or 4, then hey, you've really done something. Or even top decking late and making them discard a card or 2 right before combat, and they no longer have a Settle the Wreckage or something, and bam, get in there, you know, get work done. Duress, I like that the deck is in black, because now that does open us up to cards like Duress. It opened us up to a bunch of cards, and I highly expected to see Hour of Glory in the deck or Vraska's Contempt. But I do agree that that might be a little hard to hit with you know, the mana base and everything. But if you're trying to hit, you know, technically triple black to sack an Ifnir Deadlands, then shouldn't you be able to hit double black for, you know, Vraska's Contempt, or a single black for Hour of Glory? So I think that those could have fit in there somewhere. However, the deck did just try to stay, you know, as aggro as possible. And, you know, that's even clear here with Angrath and his neg 3 ability. Just grab one of your dudes and get in there. I do like the Pianalars, Aethersphere Harvesters, and of course, you know, everyone loves Chandra. But overall, I like the deck. And it's got one of my favorite new cards from Rivals of Ixalan, and that's Direfleet Daredevil. Not really a centerpiece deck that you can build around or whatever, but showing up in a lot of sideboards, and I actually expect this to just become a red staple. So I hope you guys like Direfleet Daredevil, because he's gonna be doing things. He's definitely gonna be doing things. All right. Anyway, let's move on to deck 2 here. We've got blue-black control. Now, yeah, we had that blue-black control that splashed white to cast Approach, but that's not what's going on here. This is just straight up blue-black control to the Scarab God for Torrential Gearhulk. So a little bit more, you know, on the Tory side of things. Actually cutting down on a Vraska's Contempt to have a Torrential Gearhulk. I think that's all right. We're seeing an Insidious Wheel here. This is not a card that, pause, let you guys read it. Right? So you can counter it, or you can pick like these other modes in other times. I'm okay with it. So you're gonna Vraska's Contempt My the Scarab God? Nah, I'm gonna get your whatever. I'm gonna get your, Phoenix or something. So that's pretty cool. I like that. Or you just counter the spell. So when countering the spell is what you want to do, then counter it. When there's better options, use those. So, right? I kind of like the card. Like, you can copy your own Vraska's Contempt. You can copy your own Glimmer of Genius. But one of the cards I really want to talk about out of this deck is Consigned to Oblivion. Alright, now we're going to see Consigned to Oblivion in all of the decks going forward that are blue-black. This is the tech. This is the tech that, Grixis, that blue-black needed to be able to answer the enchantments and things like that. You just kind of got to play through it. You get them down to one card in hand, end of their turn, bounce the enchantment, bounce the threat, and then next turn, Oblivion. They have to get rid of the card they had, plus the thing that you bounce. So it's also a good answer to Planeswalkers, things like that. You can return Glorybringer to their hand on turn 5. Maybe even make them discard, say, Glorybringer and Hazard or something if you could get that lucky. So a lot of options here in Consigned to Oblivion. I like the card, and I think we're going to be seeing it a lot. It is the 2-mana bounce target permanent, even if you don't use the Oblivion half. So the Oblivion half is just kind of like icing on the cake, because then you can make them get rid of it. So I really do like the functionality of this card, and I think it's pretty well priced. I mean, paying 5 mana to make them discard 2 is not great, but considering you don't actually have to spend another card to make that happen, yeah, I'll pay 7 mana to bounce that, and then you discard 2 cards, and especially when you split it up over turns and things like that. But because half of this card is an instant, that means that it can be targeted with Torrential Gearhulk, meaning that you can use the sorcery half of this with Torrential Gearhulk. Now remember, there are 4 Torrential Gearhulks here, so you might want to actually just spin one to just cast the Oblivion part at the end of your opponent's turn. So that's an option too. So you could go 8 mana, pay 2 to consign something, and then cast your Torrential Gearhulk. Oblivion, that's gone. Maybe you even consigned a cast out or something that was on a Torrential Gearhulk. Right? Come on. Maybe consign something that was on the Scarab God and then pay 4 mana to get a Gearhulk back. Just a ton of lines. This card's good, guys. Consigned to Oblivion. You're going to see it. We'll talk more about it later. Alright, next we've got black-white tokens. This deck destroyed me when I was playing Grixis. I came across this deck 2 times and destroyed. So it's matchup right there. Like I definitely believe it's matchup against any of the decks that are wanting to, 1-for-1 their opponent, which is what Grixis does. That's a 1-for-1 deck. I'm gonna 1-for-1 you until I start 2-for-1ing you, and which is magic, right? But anyway, the deck is really, really good. I like the Profane Processions. I like, the one of here. I like the Ixalan's Bindings. And Anointed Procession is absolutely, terrific with a hidden stockpile. Everyone knows that. This deck's not actually new. It's not anything, we haven't seen this before. But with Grixis being where it's at and wanting, 1-for-1 and having a hard time dealing with enchantments, as long as Grixis can push back some of those other decks that are trying to get in the air and fly over, then that's going to make way for the tokens decks here to go wide enough to get through there. Now, personally, I want to splash green in this just enough for Watley. I think that we could get some Watley in here and get a lot of value out of it. But then again, the deck doesn't 100% need that either. So, that's kind of one of those things. I will say that the Reaver Ambush that exiles things, that does exile, you know, the important creature here, and the important creature being not Legion's Landing, a Norner Priest. So like you can exile a Norner Priest. You can also exile the cat and the angel out of the sideboard. I think this version of it ran the angel. No angel in this sideboard. But some of the decks actually run Angel of Sanctions, and that's a 3/4. So you can exile it as well. So that's a card to actually look at. You'll see 3 Lost Legacy cards. Definitely not gone. We're definitely still seeing Lost Legacies here. Argyle's Bloodfast showing up a lot, along with Baffling End. We're seeing Baffling End more and more ever since we started seeing it in the Bant decks or the Approach decks. So Baffling End's great. Duress, Fragmentize. I mean, what more can you say? Like it has the answers that it needs. They're all mostly enchantments, so not a lot of non-enchantment answers. So Naturalize is a really good card to have against a deck like this. But for the most part, you just really have to answer them in the air. Like, so get in the air, get over them. That the more this deck gets, more praise and more play in the meta, the more cards like Rekindling Phoenix are gonna go up, because those cards are in the air and they're going to be able to fly through. Most of the time you're going to be able to draw a card or two off your Glint Sleeve Siphoner before they get to get ahead. So Menace is really good. So if you've got Menace, or you have things that have more than a 2-powered body, that's really good. I definitely think that flyers are really good for beating this type of deck. So that's my opinion on the Black White Tokens deck and how I would beat it, and that would be just more flyers. So yeah. All right. Mono red. Now we've got 2 mono red decks here. So there's a flash of the first one, and here's the flash of the second one. All right. Now we're gonna go back to the first one. Then we're gonna go back to the second one. All right, we'll go back to the first one here. All right, so we've got Direfleet Daredevil in the main board. Yeah, you're going to push my dude, then on turn 3, I'm going to play this and push your dude. And that's kind of how it works. It's really good in the Grixis mirror. It's really good in the red versus Grixis matchup, too. So the more Grixis was in my meta, the more I started backing off of cards like Whirler Virtuoso for Direfleet Daredevil, and really liked it. But now that some of the Grixis is dialing back, that I may back off of this. But as long as Fatal Push is dominant, I think that this is a really good main board card if you expect them to be Fatal Pushing something of yours on turn 1 or 2. This way you can play this and Fatal Push on 3 to clear up their 2-drop. And again, that's only if you think that they might have a 2-drop that you might want to remove. Either way, a free card, and gives you a 2/1 body that has first strike. That is definitely something. All right, next here we've got Earthshaker Kenra, Kari Zebs, Lightning Strikes, Rekindling Phoenix, Hazard the Fervent. Nothing that is just really groundbreaking. Another Direfleet Daredevil in the sideboard. Scavenger Grounds. Then we see Glorybringers, more Phoenix, Chandra's defeat. Chandra herself. Pretty much everything you would expect in a red deck. When we go down to the next red deck, it's all more of the same. We don't have the Direfleet Daredevils, but we do have Kari Zebs. We've got the Fanatical Firebrands. Like we've been seeing that take the place of Soulscar Mage a little bit, and it also was relevant here. There's no Soulscar Mage, so I think that's going to be our big takeaway from red deck this week. Is Soulscar Mage is kind of gone. Next, what do we got here? Crixus Control. No Grixis midrange. Either way, I am happy to see people are starting to take my... I mean, that'd be overzealous for people to say, like for me to say that someone actually took my advice, but for a while now in my Grixis deck, I have been running Magma Sprays over Fatal Push, and I think that this is where you want to be, guys. Personally, I like the 3-2 split with Magma Spray over Fatal Push if you think you're going to run into Mardu vehicles. If you think you're running into more like Green-Black Constrictor and other value decks, push back, and go with your, 3 Fatal Pushes over the 2 Magma Sprays. Either way, you want a full house of this, 2 and 3, one way or the other, depending on, what you think you're going to be facing. And you're going to wreck face, man. Like, Magma Spray is going to treat you so good in this meta right now. I promise. Just play it. You're going to love it. Now, the real thing I want to talk about here in these decks is this one and the next one, 6 and 7, both ran 3 copies of Abrade here. Let's go ahead and flip down to 7 here. We'll let you guys get a look at that. See that? 3 copies of Abrade, 2 Magma Sprays, 3 Fatal Push, 2 Search, 2 Essence Scatter. Like, this 1 and 2 drop right here, like, this slot is locked up, ladies and gentlemen. The only difference here is he dropped to 3 Harness Lightnings instead of 4. And, that's just because he wanted more, a little bit higher on the curve, a little bit more counter. And we're talking some slight differences, but I think this is kind of where we want to be on Crixus Control as far as the early removal and our early interaction. I like it. Now, up on the higher end of the curve here, again, we're still looking at number 6. We're going to see, Consigned to Oblivion, 3 Torrentials, 2 the Scarab God, 3 Vraska's Contempts, 4 Glimmers. Now, Glimmer's kind of new in Crixus Control. It's kind of blue-black control that has lightly splashed red for Abrade, Harness Lightning, and Magma Spray. All of these are 1 red pip each, so it's not a hard splash to make, especially when you've got things like, Aether Hub and stuff like that, and you don't really have a lot of other use for the Glimmer. Now, in the sideboard of these decks, we're seeing the Glint Sleeve Siphoners, and I think that, one of the reasons he was able to cut back on one of the Harness Lightnings is because he has the Glimmer of Geniuses. More times than not, when I'm playing this with a Glint Sleeve Siphoner with a trigger on the stack, that I'm wanting to actually dump a Harness Lightning into the Glint Sleeve Siphoner just to gain 3 energy. So you can just Glimmer there. Like, if you have 4 mana open, you just, trigger on the stack, I'm going to Glimmer, gain 2 energy, and then, you'll get to do all your Glimmer triggers, scry 2, draw 2, and then you will then be able to resolve the Glint Sleeve Siphoner trigger and then draw another one, then draw a card for turn. So you're going to put 4 cards in your hand that turn. That's a huge turn. So that's something that you can do with Glint Sleeve Siphoner, so I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. Whirler Virtuoso in the sideboard. As much as I'm just not really big on this card, I think this is the proper place for it. I am discovering that there are certain games where I'm kind of wishing I had my Thopter for a blocker, or my Whirler just to kind of create a roadblock there. I have looked into maybe just running Pia in this slot, but there's other times where I actually want the additional energy, and so it could be Pia if you wanted to. I think that this deck's going to have as about a hard of time casting Pia as it would Whirler Virtuoso, considering the main deck's kind of blue-black. But I don't think you're ever going to have a problem. You're probably going to cast this on 3 if you need to. Either way, I think the card is kind of got its spot, and I don't think you want to leave home without it. So I kind of like where he stuck this in this sideboard here. So other than that, I like what this version of the deck has done. Now, if we look at the sideboard of the 7th place Crixus deck, we've got a couple of Angraths, we've got Nicol Bolas, we've got Glorybringer, and we're not seeing the Glint Sleeve Siphoners here. Now, that could be a thing. Now that's just a strategy choice that some people want to make. Some people want to be able to go into that early game against a control deck or something and start just pinging in for a couple of, and getting those extra draw cards off of Glint Sleeve Siphoner, making them actually use a removal spell on something like a Glint Sleeve Siphoner or something. And if they've really got you on blue-black control and you bring in like a Glint Sleeve, that's kind of good. So that I kind of like having the glint sleeves in the sideboard of these control decks, but I see where he's coming from here. You know, with the Angraft and the Nicol Bolas and the Glory Bringers against mid-range decks and stuff, bring in his Glory Bringers or the Angrafts against control decks. Angrafts and Glory and Nicol Bolas would work. So I kind of like that, and you know, this does say non-Bolas Planeswalker. And this is a legendary Planeswalker Bolas. So, like, you can Hour and you're not going to kill your Bolas or hurt your Bolas. I don't know if that's relevant. Is that relevant? Probably not. Alright, let's talk about the last deck, and then we'll go over the cards for the week. Wow, man, this has been a long. What a vlog. I like doing this, though. I mean, it keeps me fresh. And hopefully it helps keep you guys fresh on what's in the meta, what we can expect people to play. So this is 4-color control. Took 8th place, so the deck is pretty good. And let's talk about the 4-color control. Because if you look at the screen right now, you're just going to see a bunch of blue-black cards and a Naturalize. Yeah, this is blue-black control, ladies and gentlemen. We've got one green source here that is non-fetchable. I do want to point that out. I would rather have a forest, or I would rather have a sheltered thicket. Right? Just a sheltered thicket. This way, in a game where I didn't need it, I got rid of it. In a game where I did need it, then I just played it. So, and it would cover both the red and the green. That's the other 2 colors here. This is a blue-black deck that has splashed red, splashed green, for 2 main board cards. Here's green, here's red, and for that it gets 4-color control. Alright, in the sideboard here we do have 1 Carnage Tyrant, which is double green, and I guess that's why it has at least a green source, and then we have a Naturalize, which is a single green. Now there is no actual red source in this deck, so that is a thing. However, I will say that because the lands would not tail your opponent. Thank you for subscribing. I have no clue who it is because I don't keep that up during my recordings, but thank you. Either way, you guys are awesome. Alright, anyway, the deck it's basically blue-black, and I like the sneak effect. I really do like the sneak effect. I'm kind of joking about the deck. Oh, it's 4-color. No, it's blue-black, and you're going to think you're playing against blue-black, and you're going to expect blue-black, and you might play around things that you might expect out of blue-black, and then out of nowhere, there's going to be a Bolas. There's going to be a Vraska, and you're not going to be happy with it. I will say that Consigned works really, really well with Bolas. You get Bolas down, and then you just happen to have a Consigned, pop, you know, now Exile too. I don't even need to Oblivion. So that's something to think about, guys. Alright, let's talk about the cards this week, and the cards that I think are ones to look out for, I would say. Now, of course, if you're playing blue-black control for the next couple weeks, you might want to look into, or might want to worry about, is there a Bolas about to happen? Is this about to happen? Are we about to have a Bolas? Maybe. I wouldn't put it past any of the blue-black decks to slip a Vraska or a Bolas in the deck. It is too easy. It's a single pip. You don't have to really splash for it. So, yeah. The Carnage Tyrant is something that I wouldn't expect, and I probably wouldn't put most opponents on having a Carnage Tyrant in the sideboard of their blue-black control deck. But a Bolas or a Vraska, yeah, I can see that. And I actually like that little sneak effect. And looks like it took him to the top 8. However, you know, once you get into the top 8, no, there wasn't revealed deck list, were they? There was no revealed deck list. This is a PPTQ, or a PTQ, online PTQ, so no, he wouldn't have been revealed, so the sneak effect never went away. Maybe they just beat blue-black control in the top 8. Either way, let's talk about Magma Spray. I think Magma Spray is one of the cards that's going to go along with a Braid here, so I'll kind of talk about both of these at the same time. The more we see these two cards get played, the more we're going to see the Green-Black Constrictor deck and the Vehicles decks get hated out of the meta. Now, that does not mean those are not great decks, okay? So if you guys like those decks, they are really good decks, but you need to just watch for your window. You know, see when, you know, that last weekend, hey, there weren't Magma Sprays being played. There weren't, you know, a lot of main board of Braids, you know, only one main board of Braid maybe. Now it's time for me to sleeve my Mardu Vehicles back up, my Jun Gods back up, or, you know, maybe even your Sultai Snake or something like that with your Sky Sovereigns and stuff in the sideboard. Now, another reason that Sultai Snake's not going to be doing really good is because it is too easy to, you know, kill everything on the battlefield, and then when your Verdurous Gearhulk comes down as an 8/8 that's supposed to just be devastating, it dies to an Abrade. So, you know, as those cards start dropping off in the meta, you guys are going to be able to play more and more of those hated decks. And when I say those hated decks, I mean Mardu Vehicles, and I mean Green-Black Constrictor. These are the decks that are currently great decks, very, very powerful decks, can win GPs, can just take tournaments, can definitely sneak in the right meta, but you're gonna have to hit that sweet spot. And that's what I want you guys, you know, to kind of pay attention to over the next couple weeks. So as you see less and less of Braids getting played, as you see people, you know, dropping these cards over into the sideboard and making, you know, other cards come into the main board, that's going to be your window. So you know, watch out for that for those of you that really like the Mardu and the Snake decks. Now, Moment of Craving, we're seeing a lot more of this. I really like Moment of Craving because of the +2 life. There's a lot of aggro decks, and, you know, Rampaging Ferocidon's not in the meta anymore, so we can gain life. And we're starting to see more and more people, you know, remember that, hey, I can gain life, that these cards have a little bit more value than they had before. You know, before I had been counting these cards out is because it's like, oh, well, they just get a Ferocidon, I can gain anyway. So what good is that card? Well, now, you know, we can actually start seeing these cards get a little bit more play, and, you know, gaining life, helping you, you know, profitably exchange in combat, things like that. Absolutely terrific, and it's exactly what we want to see against, you know, red deck and things like that, to help keep those aggro decks pushed back in the meta. And then next, of course, we talked about the Reaver Ambush here a couple times tonight with the with all of the cards that it can hit, and I'm not even going to try to go over the entire list again. You know, just everything from, you know, cats, harvesters to glint sleeve siphoners. This thing can hit a ton of things, and it exiles those. And remember, when you're exiling with your 3-drop, you're saving your 4-drop for the things that really, really matter. And, you know, like the Rekindling Phoenix, or Hazard the Fervent, or the Scarab God. Now, typically it has been white decks and black decks that have been able to answer cards like the Scarab God. However, we're starting to see more and more of the green decks use Struggle to Survive, which is giving them an answer for cards like the Scarab God. Remember, use Struggle at the beginning of their end step. They will not get the Scarab God delayed trigger until the beginning of your end step. So you get a whole turn to cast Survive for 2 mana, and just shuffle their cards back into their library. This way they no longer have the Scarab God. So remember to make sure you're doing that at the beginning of their end step. This way you can use your sorcery. And then from there, we do have that Consigned to Oblivion. We talked about this card a lot. This card's really good. Pairs well with Bolas. You know, pairs well with Torrential Gearhulk. We started to see it in more and more of the blue-black control decks, the Grixis decks. It seems like it is going to be the answer that, you know, most of those decks were looking for. Now, what's really new in the meta is Anointed Procession. We're starting to see a lot more Anointed Procession in the decks. We've got, you know, the blue-white tokens. We've got the green-white tokens. We've got the black-white tokens. We've got Abzan tokens. We've got Esper tokens. A lot of tokens decks that are floating around in the meta. A lot of people are trying different strategies with all these tokens decks. Anointed Procession is a card that is here. It is part of our meta. And then there's a card that probably should be part of our meta, but because it is pretty much only played in the green-black Constrictor deck, and maybe a one-of in some of the Mardu decks, and those are currently being pushed out, it is a card that we're going to notice its absence in the meta, and that is Walking Ballista. However, when we do see it, it is going to strictly be better than normal, because we're going to kind of get away from certain creatures and things, because right now with everyone just using cards like Fatal Push and Vraska's Contempt to just kill everything, it doesn't matter what the power and toughness is. It only matters of converted mana cost or evasion. So if you can protect it or not, or the converted mana cost. So it doesn't really matter if it's a 2/1 or things like that. So I think that with Walking Ballistas being pushed out, that's going to make even more room for more powerful 2/1s and things like that. And my new favorite 2/1 is Direfleet Daredevil. These are cards that the Walking Ballista answers, and I think that we might start to see Walking Ballista show up in a few extra decks that we normally didn't see it in. And I wouldn't even be surprised to see it show up as a 1 or 2 of in the sideboard in a Grixis deck, just to give them a couple extra answers for red deck and a couple extra answers for the mirror match and things like that. So I like Walking Ballista, and I think that in most situations you can get it onto the battlefield and get profit out of it. Sometimes 2 and 3 for 1. I mean, it's great when you have a 2/2 or a 3/3 Walking Ballista, and they then are forced to use a spell on it, and then that force of the spell makes you then have to fire it off to kill a couple dudes. Like, you're turning that one card into the spell that they're casting on it and the creatures that you're removing from the battlefield. Yeah, that's a lot of value, and I think that we're going to be missing that out of the meta for the next week or so, and I think we're going to feel that. So watch for the aggro decks to come back this week, guys. I expect that with everything slowing down as much as it has, that the aggro decks are going to be extremely rampant this week, and are going to just be trying to get under all the decks. So that's my opinion on the meta, and that's why I think we had this red-black aggro deck just kind of come up right through all of these other decks, and including the mono reds. They did it as well, but there was a ton of control that this deck made it through. So I definitely think that's where we're at. I hope you guys enjoyed the coverage, and we'll see you next time here on Sideboard MTG.